And good morning and namaste everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Hindu Lounge episode number 96. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Hindu Lounge, we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. We come live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern. And with me, as always, is Utsada. Utsav Chakravarti Utsada is the executive director of Hindu Pact. And I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. Utsada, welcome from India. And tell us about if you had any celebrity brushes in last 1 week that we talked about. Did Utsada is in Calcutta, and I always ask Utsada if Mamta Didi has come and paid a visit to him. Utsada, any Mamta Didi visit or any of the law enforcement Mamta Didi representatives coming and visiting you for doing all these shows?
Well, I haven't had the fortune of meeting any dignitaries in India. As you can see, I'm a small person, so you know I'm
Utsada,
enjoying home.
I heard that the kind of shows that we did last week would definitely get Mamta Didi's attention. What happened?
Thankfully, not. Thankfully, I haven't received the attention. But overall, it's been I've been enjoying family time and as much as I could, and
I
it's been a good. Yeah, so I'm enjoying almost 6 years later. I'm visiting India, and so I'm enjoying my family time here.
Hey, Utsada,
But I did have an interesting interaction with the governor's family, myself,
whoa! So you
family.
were the
Yeah,
governor instead of the chief minister. Tell us about it.
no, I didn't meet. I just happened to be at a very famous and very uh, punya place called Dakshineshwar next to the Ganga River, and we went there to get blessings from Ma Ganga and my wife and myself and my daughter. So we were at the ghat, and the governor of West Bengal also happened to be there at that time. So
Coincidence?
it's a coincidence.
Really?
Thankfully, we
There are
were
no
there.
coincidences, Utsada.
No, it was a coincidence. Yeah, so it was good, and
Hey,
we saw people with bodyguards there.
and
That's
you did you get invited to some of the key foreign affairs meetings this week while you were there? Because that's our topic for the day. So that we are going to talk about visit of the deputy national security advisor of the Biden administration for the U.S., Daleep Singh, who actually was in India. And so was the foreign minister of Russia, and so was the foreign minister of UK, and all of them are there, and you representing Hindu Pact. So what an interesting and exciting week, right?
it was a very interesting and exciting week in many ways. Many people were analyzing it in different manners, and it's a very interesting time for everybody because you know very few occasions have happened in recent past where on a single week you had top leadership, both diplomatic as well as intelligence and national security leadership of five major global powers, some opposing sides of global powers, all being in New Delhi within a period of 1 week. And it's a very rare occasion. Take it for whatever it means. Many people are taking it as a way of measuring India's value in the field of global diplomacy. Many are taking it in different ways. So take it for what it is, but it's a very fascinating event that unfolded in the last week.
So let's lay the groundwork, right? I mean, we have talked very little about. I mean, we have talked about the Ukrainian Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have talked about it, and we have said, look, I mean, we generally are not for invasions, and we are for the peaceful resolution of all the political matters, and you know but there is a lot going on over there. So lay some groundwork about the conflict, and then we'll talk about why are all the global powers, because last week actually, the Chinese foreign minister was also in India. So now you have representatives from US, from UK, from from obviously from Soviet Union, or sorry, not Soviet Union. I'm living in 80s, from Russia, and all of them visiting all of them visiting India. So first, let's talk about the invasion a little bit. Then let's talk about why are these foreign ministers and representatives, high level representatives of governments visiting India, and then we'll talk about implications of that on American Hindus. So that I have not yet seen a single article that talks about implications of all of this on American Hindus. So we are going to be the first ones who are going to talk about that. So please talk about the conflict a little bit and lay the groundwork, and then we'll talk about the rest of it.
Yes. So you know what is. I'm sorry, my daughter is crying in the background, but uh,
That's all right.
yeah. So Ajay bhai, there is a very famous saying from Lenin, of all people. Since you mentioned Soviet Union by mistake, I'm gonna bring a Soviet Union memory. Uh, so there is a very famous saying by Lenin, which goes this way: there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen. So the last 1 month the last 1 month, the few weeks that have passed in the last 1 month are worth many decades in terms of historical changes, in terms of geopolitical changes, in terms of paradigm shifts in global attitudes and alignments. So we are living through those times, and it's very interesting that these things are happening. And you know the Chinese, the foreign minister's visit to India has a lot of it's a very complicated process that China is trying to bring about here. China is trying to be friends with India because of the global realignment that is happening, without trying to compromise on its aggressive position on the border issues, which is a very difficult task and almost an impossible task for China to achieve, because it is on the wrong when it comes to its aggressive posture towards India. So it cannot expect India to find peace with China with that posture. So it has to compromise on that posture. So that was the background of the Chinese foreign minister's visit to India. The foreign minister's visit and the leadership visit from the Western countries, especially UK and America, uh, those are kind of very interesting visits, because those, in my understanding, they remind India of its colonial past. I say that very carefully because those visits were almost like a carrot and stick gesture towards India, where India was reminded of its past of being a colonially subjugated country, while it was given a air of modern day parity in terms of geopolitics. So these things were, very visible in the past week. And then, of course, Foreign Minister of Russia's Lavrov was here, and that also had its own. And I'll go into that detail very soon.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because even though China has been trying to get traction and show that it's a major power, and it can play both sides of the things, by one hand keeping, because it's not yet quite there, right? So it's trying very hard to, on one hand, show that they are against the invasion. On the other hand, they are trying to support the Russian government, but they haven't gotten as much traction because they have no credibility in the matter. On the other hand, so that India is getting a lot more respect from the world community for its neutral stand, right? I mean, if you look at the countries that are neutral in the world, India is actually the leader, and that kind of in some ways goes back to the non-aligned movement and credibility that India built by being a neutral, non-aligned country, in some ways at least, right? And if you look at the countries that are not aligned right now, and with either of the two camps, and they're all seeking peace without actually being on one side or the other, because you do need people who are neutral in order to broker peace. Everyone cannot be on the same, on one side or the other, committed and still kind of broker peace. So if you look at the countries that are that are neutral right now, in addition to India, I mean, if you look at the Arab countries are mostly neutral, and they are seeking peace without actually going on one side or the other. Israel, of a very close ally of United States, has is also trying to play neutral and trying to play a peace broker. And so several of these Southeast Asian countries. Now there are countries like Japan, and there are countries like Korea, who are very committed on one side, and then there are countries who are like Belarus, who are committed on the Russian side. But then there's a vast middle there, right?
Correct. And the countries you named last, whether it is Japan, Germany, some of the NATO countries, as well as Korea, these are client states. These states don't have their own military. They literally have formal agreements of military and defense protection with the United States and NATO powers. So they are literally client states of Western military alliances, both Japan and South Korea as well. Similarly, Belarus and some of the Russian former Soviet republics uh, are client states of Russia. To some extent, even Armenia has been proved to be one of those states, even though it tried to break away and then learned a very hard lesson over the last year, what it takes to not be a friend of Russia when real emergency comes. So so there are you cannot compare India to one of these client states, and I think that's where many Western analysts are making that mistake, that they believe that just because there is KFC and Coca-Cola in India now, India has become a client state of United States. It's not. It has never been one. And India has, if of all the countries in the world that are still strong, powerful, independent countries, India has a record of being a neutral state. The irony here is that this is something that I will quote for a very famous diplomat from India, P. Parthasarathy, who once Cold War era diplomat, who said that during the Americans and Western power groups, when they want your support, they expect you to support you. When Russia wants your support, they only expect you to stay neutral. so 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 that is another interesting interesting history, because from the Soviet time itself, you know all that Russia wanted from any country was to not support the West. All that West wanted from any country was to support the West.
That's right.
So there are different expectations, and that is why it's a very complex world that we live in.
That's a really nice way to put it, and let's nice introduction to the topic overall. And let's talk a little bit about Daleep Singh. Now, Daleep Singh is the person, for people who don't know, visited India. He is the deputy NSA, and here is his picture and a short bio for people who are looking at the screen. I should put this in the bottom, maybe. Let me see. There we go. Or maybe not. Regardless, right? I mean, this is the person who is the deputy national security advisor. His background is actually finance, and if you look at what he has done in past, he was part of the Fed or Federal Reserve. He is an expert at in financial policies, and how the national security and the foreign policy the fiscal policy and the national security kind of come together, right? That's his strength. He is, interestingly enough, he is the grandson, or maybe the great grand nephew, I guess, of the person who was the first elected congressman in United States, a person of Indian origin, congressman, right? And he was born in Maryland, only in Maryland, and raised in North Carolina. And his, as you can see, his he went to some marquee schools, but that's his background. So his background is finance, and his expertise is sanctions. So his interest is, how do you devise the sanctions, and how do you implement the sanctions on a country whose policies do not align with United States. So that's Daleep Singh. And Dalip Singh goes to India to talk about, you know, how America needs India to align with America on the issue of Ukraine. Tell us what happened after that.
Well, it's very interesting about that. We need to know about Dilip Singh's background, and so Dilip Singh is American by every measurement of identity. He's an American. He has probably never been to India his father probably never went to India, and so he grew up in America. He's an American. He represents America. He goes to India, and with the government background that you just explained, somebody who is an expert on finance and somebody who is expert on international sanction laws and how multilateral and unilateral sanctions can be applied on different countries, which America has a very long track record of using over the last 2 decades, since September 11, especially. So you know he goes to India, and then he tells Indians, and when I say Indians, he met the foreign secretary of India. He also met, I believe, the foreign minister of India, and then he tells them, and this is a fascinating part. I'm pretty sure they had long conversations which were not public. uh, they had private conversations, a lot of frank conversations, but the public part, which was interesting, is that he said, and I quote here, what we would not like to see is a rapid acceleration of India's imports from Russia as it relates to energy or any other exports that are currently being prohibited by the US or by other aspects of international sanction regimes. So he's essentially saying that India should not escalate its imports from Russia because the US and the Western powers are right now putting sanctions on Russia, really, really tight sanctions, like probably the tightest sanctions ever applied on any country historically, probably even tighter than those that were applied on North Korea and Iran. And then he goes on to say, and this was the part that received the most press and the most media attention. He says if China breaches the line of control, which is LAC, if China breaches the LAC again, it's actually called line of actual control. So that's why the A
Right.
comes in. LAC again, Russia will not come running to India's defense. So he is essentially saying that in the past, Russia has been a friend of India when it comes to defense procurements, emergencies, supplies, resupplies, spare parts. Russia has always stood by India, and India has had a all-weather friend in Russia, and before that in the Soviet Union. And even in the recent China-India conflagration, Russia did provide with anything that India asked for during that fight, including with small arms, ammunitions, what do you call it, ordnance, shells, rockets, ordnance was easily made available to India on a very short notice at reasonable prices, because that's what Russia has done historically with India. Uh, but now Dilip Singh is intending to say that because now Russia is beholden to China, because Russia is now quickly becoming a client state of China because of the economic stranglehold it is facing from the West, it will not be in a position to defend India, because then China will put economic pressure on Russia and make it fall in line. That's what he's intending to say, that Russia is now becoming a client state of China. So, hey, don't think that Russia is going to be your friend. And that is a very veiled threat to India, because it essentially means that US is not going to help India against China. Even though it must be said that in the past year's conflagration with China in Ladakh, in the Galwan Valley conflagration, that India lost more than 20 soldiers, and obviously China also lost around 30-35 soldiers. But then in the first beginning they said they lost one soldier, and then they said, okay, we lost 12 soldiers, and then now people are saying that, oh, maybe 12, 20 more were lost. But so they're slowly releasing the numbers. But whatever be the case, America did provide India with intelligence on satellite, real-time satellite intelligence. So he's saying, that will not ever. So he's threatening India in terms of those kinds of help. But it needs to be said that even during earlier times, US did not come in as a friend of India's in the past. Uh, I remember clearly hearing during different think tank conversations that the US was also very hesitant to support India during the Mumbai terror attacks. It was, they only provided satellite recordings of some people, of conversations that happened between the terrorist groups who were handlers in Pakistan, Karachi, and the actual terrorists in Mumbai. Only after the Shabad House, the Jewish community center was targeted, and Israel got involved as a victim country, because Jews from Israel and America were targeted in the Shabbat House. And before that, America was very hesitant to provide India with information.
So
So
that no, go ahead, please finish your thought.
no, so I'm just saying that, in from India's perspective, there has been this feeling, and I have heard this from a lot of people who are in India, Indian diplomats, Indian analysts, uh, who are see, this is the irony of the whole thing. Indians want to be friends of America geopolitically and militarily. There are sections in America who want to be friends of India also geopolitically and militarily. But there is a distrust at some level, and especially because of the steps that were recently taken by Biden administration to send signals to India about Shaheen Bags and the farmer
Yeah, yeah,
protest, CA, all these things.
yeah.
Indians are extremely reticent, and Indians do see, because everybody can
Right.
see these
So
things.
we'll come to that part in just a second, but I do want to point out one thing, that when China attacked, or and illegally tried to claim some of the territory in India, in Ladakh region, by salami slicing and going few feet or few yards every day, kind of thing. And then you referred to the Galwan incident, where several 20 Indian soldiers laid their lives down, and several Chinese. And you said that Russia came and to India's aid, but I also want to point out that after that incident, India got a lot of and it's not like Russia gave it for free. India bought it from Russia, uh, but India also got quite a bit of military hardware, cold weather, gear, all of that from America as well. So I don't want to make I don't want the impression to prevail that that was a one-sided Russia only helping India, or in terms of allowing India to buy some of the technology. A lot of American technology also came in. At that time, India made emergency purchases, and as you know, India has been trying to diversify its sources of armament. So India has recently bought P8I planes, which are the the long range planes that do the the surveillance and other things. That India has bought some of the attack helicopters and other helicopters from US, and quite a bit. I mean, so India is trying to diversify. India is also working on Atmanirbhar policy, which is India make things in India and by Indian companies. So it is not that India is not. It is only Russia that allowed that. Now I understand that there's a long history, right? A long history that goes back into 60s, where India was. In some ways, during the China War in 1962, America was on the side of India, and but after that, in 1971, India was threatened by America, by Seventh Fleet and Nixon, who sent out Seventh Fleet to threaten India, and Russia came, Soviet Union at the time came to India's help. So India has seen the positives and negatives of being having very close ties with America. I think at a people to people level, I've seen so many surveys that people of India want to be want India to have very close ties with America. At the same time, people in India are apprehensive about what it means to be on the side of America alone, because they know that American government can quickly pivot in its foreign policy, and just because they are the friends today, they may not be friends tomorrow. So there's no I think and maybe that is an artifact of being a democracy where the governments change and different people come to power, and your foreign policy in some ways is beholden to that democratic process. Now, having said, but India wants something, the kind of neighborhood India is in. India needs a more durable, more longer lasting, more all weather kind of friendship, and that does not come from America. And that is why it is more important for India to be neutral in these conflicts than many of the other countries. And so that you alluded to the statements that Daleep Singh made, and it's almost a threat that, hey, if Russia doesn't come to your rescue when China attacks, and look, if we are not there because you didn't support our policy, then you are left to defend your own. Hey, that's fine. I mean, he that kind of threats the will not he can make that threat, and I don't think it's a random statement. It was a very well thought out statement. I'm sure that they had a lot of thought that went into it. They anticipated India's reaction, and he still made that statement. And it is, you know as if you just look at the statement itself, a country with a 5,000, 7,000, 8,000 year history and a culture and the pride in that culture will not take that statement lightly. And they ought to have known that, because if they didn't, there's a much bigger problem here. They ought to have known that. And if they, that India is going to, with the kind of government that we have in India today, India is not going to take this statement lightly. And it didn't, right? So the first reaction that came out, one of the first reactions that came out, and we have it up on the screen, was from Syed Akbaruddin. And for those who don't know, Syed Akbaruddin was India's permanent representative at United Nations, and he was very articulate. And he came out and said, so this is our friend. This is not the language of diplomacy. This is the language of coercion. Somebody tell this young man that punitive unilateral economic measures are a breach of customary international law. Okay, so there is a legal argument, but I want to take a step back and say, look at all your other allies. None of them are cutting off their ties with Russia. Even a country like Germany, which is so dependent on Russia, has not broken off all the ties with Russia. They are still importing energy. Now they want to cut it down and all that, but it cannot happen overnight.
No, no,
Okay.
no. Russia, it's Russia now which is cutting out the exports. They are
Well,
not trying to cut it out.
yeah.
So most of
So
Eastern Europe and Germany are still importing Russian gas at a higher price because the gas prices have gone up, and they don't want to cut it off. It is
no,
Russia which is saying now that now we are going to only sell you if you pay us in rubles. So it's
right.
now Russia that is cutting gas to these countries, and these are NATO allies of America.
These
And
are NATO.
not just
So
that,
look, I
America
mean,
itself is importing uranium from Russia.
yeah,
It's still, after all these sanctions, America has exempted uranium from the sanctions because America needs the uranium. It
correct.
doesn't
I
need
was
the
just going
gas
to
and
come.
the
I'm
oil.
just Yeah. I was just going to say that not only there are so many carve outs in the sanction that Dalip Singh himself engineered. The entire plan of how the sanctions should be and all that. There's so many carve outs for friends and family. So I think that we have to understand that here is a country that is not as prosperous as many of the NATO allies that US has, which has one and a quarter billion, approaching 1.5 billion people. It has its own energy needs, and with the kind of economy that is recovering from COVID-19, we now, if your oil and gas prices go up to the level that it has gone up, India cannot, India or the people in India cannot afford those prices. So if there is a discounted, I mean, and look, India has to feed and clothe and get these people, get the people who are uh, and middle class and lower middle class and other and people who are below the poverty line. India wants to uplift them. And if you say that I'm not going to, and India imports what, 80-90% of its fuel requirement or energy requirements from outside. Now, in that situation, there's no way India can come and say that I'm not going to buy Russian oil. So we made multiple arguments here. One,
No,
there's a
not just
historic.
that. I want to add
Just one
something
second,
more.
Sada.
Yeah.
Just one second. So what I was saying in summary is that there are multiple arguments here, right? One is that here is country India that wants to be neutral, that does not want to take one side or the other. Second argument is that it doesn't help India to take one side or the other because Russia has always been helpful to India when it comes to foreign policy. So India can actually, and you need a country which has goodwill on both sides to play a peacemaker. That is the role India can play. And the third argument is that, look, here are the people, 1.4 billion people, whose energy requirements have to be met at a reasonable cost. Sir, I didn't mean to cut you off. My apologies. Please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add, and to your point in summarizing it, while you were summarizing it, that it was very aptly conveyed by the Foreign Minister of India, Jaishankar, when he said that 3 months from now, we should look at the countries who imported Russian oil and Russian products and see who are in the top five list, and then we should talk. So he actually predicated that even now, given all that is happening, after 3 months, you will still not find India as the top five importers of post-sanction gas and oil from Russia. It will be some other countries who will be American allies. So that's that is the level of confidence, and I'm very impressed with Jaishankar's polite yet very consequential and direct messaging, because that's the hallmark of a true diplomat. So it was very impressive to see the way things were handled.
Yeah, and so the so you know this is not and I'm gonna say this out and see what you think about it, right? And we have a couple of slides on this also. You in the beginning started to say that with this administration, now, admittedly, this administration probably has more people with the Hindu sounding name, and more people of Indian origin than probably any other American administration in past, right? I mean, there are people at the highest level, starting with the vice president, who is of Indian origin, and people like Daleep Singh and people across the board. If you look at, there's so many people of Indian origin and so many people who are Hindus who are part of this administration, and yet people who are American Hindus are still scratching their head and saying, why do we have people like Dalip Singh make this statement? But then you look back and say, Dalip Singh is not the only one, right? There has been quite a few attempts, and one of the reasons why India has probably not come out blatantly in support of one side or the other is because the recent months have not been as smooth as one would have liked between India and America. And that goes back to constant comments by by this particular administration, American administration's representatives on the events that are taking place in India. They would do better to not take any stand, but they have, right? Here is an example. So, what do you say about, and I'm just moving the slide to the next slide. What do you say about this? So that I mean, why is why are the American administrative officers or people from American administration, uh, appointed people?
Ajay, just say it, Biden administration. You don't say it American administration, Biden administration. You can say it. It's okay.
I American
We gotta
administration.
be we gotta
Uh,
be honest.
I
America
so
has diverse opinions and diverse
I
attitudes and
understand,
diverse.
but the ruling party, it's always the administration always implies people who are ruling right now. But why
Right.
is the American administration of today so eager to interfere in India's internal affairs. Here is an example. Talk about this.
So I will say this, that this is a trend in many American administrations, especially in today's Biden administration, and this is not the first time. In the past, it has, and again, we have to be careful about blaming any one particular party about this, because historically it has been both parties from time to time, depending on what their foreign policy positions have been. Long before, all the during the Bush administration, or not the son Bush, but the father Bush administration, as well as during Reagan administration, when there was full blown Cold War, America, the Republican administration used to constantly take anti-India positions. But those were the geopolitical times when Cold Wars were fully in place, and they had a certain posture towards India. Then things changed over time, and then again during Clinton administration, there were times when India was treated very nicely, and then when there were times when foreign policy advisors and foreign State Department officials like Robin Raphael were given free hand in abusing India at public forums and multilateral forums. Robin Raphael literally went on record during President Clinton's time, saying that India should not, Kashmir should not belong to India, and so it has happened in the past. And then again, after September 11, there was a new reckoning in American leadership, that hey, after all these decades that India had been complaining about jihadi terrorism, maybe they had some they were right about some things. And when the what do you say, the the chickens came home to roost, they realized that there was some sense in what India was saying. So things have gone back and forth like that. That's the nature of democracies. You have leadership that has certain attitudes and antagonistic approaches towards certain nations. I mean, India, back in 2000, I believe in 7, when today's President Biden received the highest civilian award in Pakistan, India should have guessed back then also that, no country gives their highest civilian award to a foreign senator at that point of time for no reason. I mean, there must be a reason why somebody is being given the highest civilian award. So, India has its understanding of things, and things panned out in a certain way. So I believe that under Biden administration today, India has, no doubt, there are highest number of Indian Americans or Hindu Americans, however you can put it. Actually, there are a lot of Muslim Americans as well who are of Indian origin, more so than in any other administration before. But at the same time, there are occasions over the last 2 years where India has felt, and Indians have felt both in India and America, that there have been statements from the administration or representatives of the administration that were not needed, and that clearly showed interference in India's internal affairs, in India's security affairs, as well as efforts to fish in the fault lines that a diverse and large society like India has.
Yeah, Utsada, I want to point out one thing. And you said that Biden received the highest civilian award from the government of Pakistan. While that is true, I also want to say that Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, for as long as he's still the Prime Minister of Pakistan, because there's a lot of activity going on in Pakistan, and we don't want to get into that. But Imran Khan has been waiting for a phone call from Biden since the day Biden got elected, and he has not received one. And that kind of shows today's relationship. So while you may be right about the past, and you may be right that okay, well, he got Biden got the civilian award. Well, it seems to me that the favor is not returned, because
Well,
otherwise Imran Khan.
not returned to Imran Khan, because Imran Khan was not the prime minister in back
Well,
in 2007.
I understand, but I'm just talking from country to country. At least he would have gotten a courtesy call back, which he hasn't. So I just want to say that, look, I mean, I don't want to sound it like we are taking one political side or the other. We're just pointing out the obvious things here. So you know, but having said that, I think the couple of things, right? And here is what I think. That I think that these semi-government or government instruments that America has, one of them being the USCIRF. Uh, so this is the body that monitors, supposedly monitors, the religious freedom across the world and issues the report. And this particular body has consistently um, named India for last 2 years, consistently beaten down India. That there's no question about that. But in last 2 years, it has put India in the same category as Saudi Arabia, okay, as a country of particular concern. This is like one of the worst ratings you can get, and they have put India in that category, a country with a minority that is flourishing compared to its neighbors. Compared to, I would argue that the very fact that people that people who get an opportunity want to leave Bangladesh or want to leave Afghanistan, want to and they leave and settle in India illegally. People who are Rohingya Muslims who are being driven out of Myanmar, who want to come and illegally settle in India. So Assam is taken over by people who have illegally entered India from Bangladesh. Rohingya Muslims have been found in large numbers in Jammu. You cannot go to a slum in Mumbai and find that there are without a slum in Mumbai without presence of large number of Bangladeshi migrants, illegal migrants. So if India was so bad for Muslims, why are they leaving a Muslim country like Bangladesh and coming to India? Or why are people fleeing Burma and not going to Bangladesh and not going to say Pakistan? Why are they going to Jammu and stopping there? What stops them from crossing the border, and or going by sea or whichever way they want to go to Pakistan? And Pakistan is not even willing to take them. So I think USCIRF is a body that does so much disservice to America, and that is the disservice that is now that is the chicken that is coming home to roost. That if USCIRF is not beating down India the way it is beating down, then India would be much more open to be more closely aligned with US on its foreign policy. And then there's this person who is the uh, ambassador at large for international religious freedom. And again, another person who has absolutely no right to speak about India is now going on making statements about what school uniform the kids in India should or should not wear. That is none of his business. And it is if he wants to keep making those kinds of interference statements and interfere in the in the internal affairs of India, then again the chicken will come home to roost, and this is the consequence that American foreign policy will have. And the worst part is that American Hindus who want to support America in all different ways, and American Hindus who want to tell India to support America also hesitate because they will be seen as enablers of USCIRF, and they'll be seen as enablers of this ambassador uh, at large for international religious freedom, right? So this is what is this there's a dilemma that American Hindus are facing, and this is the dilemma
So,
that
so, so,
when
so
it
to
comes
put
to
it in the
India.
words, of the British Foreign Secretary, it's a dilemma of morality. You know, she had proclaimed that India has a dilemma of morality, where India is, making moral compromises to buy gas from Russia. So I must put it back to her and say it's a dilemma of morality, given the track record of many of uh, these politicians and global power brokers vis-a-vis India. So also another point that many countries in the world, and this is not unique to India, but this is actually happening in many countries, including real American allies for decades, NATO allies for decades, countries like Israel, countries like UAE, countries like
Oh,
Saudi Arabia.
countries like Turkey is playing neutral.
I mean, Turkey has a different agenda and a different history, but let me go to countries which have like literally been complete friends of America and nothing else, like UAE, United Arab Emirates. You know, complete friends of America like Lebanon, friends of America like Egypt, all historically aligned with America. They are having second thoughts. And I think we as Americans, and when I say we, as in we are live in America and we care about America's well-being, we should be encouraging a discussion in terms of our efforts, how we can ensure that people who are allies, global allies of ours, people who are democratic countries around the world, don't develop these kinds of doubts, because these doubts don't happen in thin air. There must be something that is happening around the world and something that people are reading, real or perceived. I'm not saying everything is that is America is accused of is real, but even if there is a perception that there are efforts to do regime change, if a certain administration doesn't like the leadership of another country, there are NGOs that are put into place to regime change. Immediately there is a quote unquote color revolution that happens somewhere, and lives are lost and innocent people die and nobody cares. So this perception is also not good, because as leaders in the global community, even having this perception weakens America's position globally. And that's not something that most of us want globally. And it's not just related to India, it's related to UAE, it's related to Israel, it's related to even European countries like Greece. Greece is another country which is a NATO country. I was reading somewhere that there are protests in Greece because Greece is allowing American tanks to travel through Greece to countries like Lithuania, Latvia, and other countries that are allies of NATO allies on the borders of Russia and Ukraine. There are protests in Greece that are happening like this, and I won't be surprised. Hungary, another country which is a friend of Europe, Western Europe, has also taken a very independent position. So there is a paradigm shift happening globally, and we have to do some introspection to ensure that we, from America's point of view, must do our homework to ensure that people don't perceive us as flippant global power.
But so that talk about American Hindus, because we already talked about the foreign policy part of it, and I started the conversation about the why American Hindus are not reaching out to their friends and families and other people in India and saying, hey, do whatever you can to reach out to your elected representatives and tell them to support America on this and on Ukraine. Now, again, I want to make a distinction on a when it comes to the positions that Hindus have taken, India has taken. We have all called for peace in end to war. We have all called for peace. We have all called for. We have all said that this kind of aggression is we don't condone. We don't support this kind of aggression. We have all said
Nobody
that.
can. Nobody can.
Nobody
Nobody
does,
can.
right? But my question to you is, and I laid out a few examples of USCIRF and the ambassador at large for the religious freedom and their role and why it is stopping American Hindus from making a much more stronger statement. In your view, why is it that the people who believe that America is their karma bhumi, and why don't they reach out to people in their dharma bhumi and say support America? What is stopping American Hindus from doing that?
Actually, it's even more complicated than that. For a large section of the American Hindu community and Indian American community, America is their karma bhumi. For an even larger section, slowly, Lily, can you take her inside, please? It is also their punya bhumi. The Americans who are Hindus who are born in America and their kids now, given that the Indian American diaspora is more than 2-3 generations old now, given the large numbers that came in the 60s and 70s, now the Americans who are Hindus also have America as their Janmabhumi. So now it's a debate. It's a dilemma between Karma Bhumi and Janma Bhumi on one side, and Punya Bhumi on other side, and that is that has to be bridged at some point, and that debate is going to become stronger and stronger as time passes, because there will be people like Daleep Singh who genuinely have no interest or connection with India, but have a name that sounds like an Indian name or a Hindu name. So if this dilemma is going to continue to increase, and you will slowly see in the next generation or so, where the more and more diplomats who will be in this role, and Indians will be perplexed sitting in India, like this guy looks like an Indian, but he actually doesn't represent India. And that has been a dilemma that many other diaspora communities in America has faced. The German community in America has faced this diaspora. And I mean, right now Germany is an ally of America, but back in World War One, Germany was America's biggest enemy. And that dilemma was faced by the German diaspora, which is one of the largest diaspora of any
Yeah.
community in America. It is the largest actual
It is
diaspora.
the largest ethnic group in America.
Yeah. So they had that dilemma during the early part of the 20th century. They had that dilemma in the World War II also. Similarly, the Japanese, and that dilemma was very interesting because they still shared a common faith, which is the Protestant church. That was still their shared identity. In the case of Japanese, they also had a dilemma of not just being ethnically different like the Indians, but also religiously different because most Japanese were Shinto and Buddhist, and it's just like us. So they had the religious. So the Japanese were actually treated far more harshly than the Germans because they were having it similar to us during World War II. And fast forward or during the Cold War period, you had the same dilemma that East Europeans had, Hungarians had, Czechs had, Slovaks had, Russians had during the Cold War, Russian diaspora, and recently in the last 3 decades, the Serbian diaspora and had also the same dilemma. So when America was bombing Serbia, there was a lot of conflict that many Serbians faced, where America was their Janmabhoomi and their Karmabhoomi, and Serbia or former Yugoslavia was their Punyabhumi, and they had the Slavic connection. So we have to look at case studies of other communities. All of them may not match because some still share the Christian faith, and in our case, that's a bigger diversity issue. But we should look at these case studies and we should learn from it as a community because the future will bring more of this visibility.
Yeah, and you have a really good example of this Russian NHL star, right? Let me put that up. Talk about, and that is an example of what kind of dilemma a diaspora community faces.
Correct. So look at NHL star Ovechkin. He's a popular player. I mean, he's actually from Washington D.C. You know, a huge fan following. On a weekday when I used to go to work and I used to take the metro, everybody would wear a T-shirt, wear a jersey with Ovechkin's name on it. Uh, and lo and behold, now that this conflict is happening, people are abusing him. People are treating him as if he is Putin's son-in-law, and somehow it's his responsibility to fight the war on behalf of America and Ukraine. So, and he's been like, I'm a Russian. I care about Russia, and that's about it. I have no role in this geopolitical conflict, and I don't expect me to play a role in that. So that's another example of the kind of dichotomies and conflicts that will arise when this karma bhumi versus plus janma bhumi versus punya bhumi thing arises. And luckily, so far we haven't had that with Israel yet. But that would be interesting if Israel at any point of time ends up at the wrong end of America's foreign policy position, and see how that pans out.
Yeah. So the good. Any final thoughts before we move on to our regularly scheduled segments, because we have a lot to talk about there as well, right?
Correct. I don't have. My only thought is that we have a few listeners today, and we probably will have more listeners, viewers over the week. But I believe that the conversation that we had today in terms of punya bhumi versus janma bhumi, matribhumi, and karma bhumi, this is going to be one of the most important topics for the years that are going to come. You will see more and more people with Hindu sounding names in positions of power, and from their perspective, they may or may not believe the things that we believe, or people in our punya bhumi are aligned with or in the best interest for. So when interests
Absolutely.
will not align, there will be times in future when will not align, and how we span that gap and how we bridge the lack of conversation there, we have a very important role to play, and we should prepare ourselves for it. So I hope people watch this show and then think how we can do that.
Absolutely. And with that, Utsada, thank you very much. I think there was a great conversation. And now The Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं लोकहितं.
And so that once again, there's still a situation in Ukraine. We've been talking about it. The situation there is still grim, and people are still going through very very challenging time. And Utsada, I want to recognize the four Hindu charities that are playing role in supporting and helping people in Ukraine and the refugees who are leaving Ukraine. People who are leaving Ukraine and becoming refugees, and these are Seva International, BAPS, uh, which is the Swaminarayan Sanstha, ISKCON, which is the Hare Krishna movement, and AOL, or Art of Living, the Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's organization. And I would urge people to, if to go to one of these four charities and make a contribution. They're very legitimate. They've always committed themselves to doing to doing good for the society in many many countries, and whatever we can do to help people who are leaving Ukraine as a result of the war there, we should do. And please reach out to one of these four prominent organizations and make a contribution. Okay. And so that the best thing is that we promote these organizations. They don't even know that we are promoting them, but they're really doing genuine work. We have absolutely no interest in uh, financial or any of other kind, because we are just giving the names of the organizations out. We have worked with these organizations in the past, and we have a lot of respect for the work they do. Okay. With that, Utsada, let's come to our other favorite section of the week, and that is the Hindu good news of the week. And Utsada, this week's Hindu good news of the week, let's see if I can go to that slide. I don't want to spoil the surprise. So that I came across these two news items. So on the right is the opening of Grand Sri Venkateshwara Swami Mandir in Vishakhapatnam. This is in Andhra Pradesh, uh, and this is the mandir that is promoted and by the Tirupati Tirumala Devasthanam, which is the Tirupati Mandir's trust. And this is, they're constructing a lot of mandirs, but this is a really nice, large mandir. And I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention, because on the left hand side of the screen, you see uh, a really nice mandir that is being built and inaugurated, and expanded Yadari hill temple. So in Telangana. Now, why did I pick these two, Sada? Because as you know, that there is a lot of uh, there's a lot of money that is pouring into India right now, especially in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, to convert Hindus to Christianity. And Hindus need the mandirs as anchor points of their community, to uh, to stem the flow of this conversion that is going on. But it's not just the temple, right? It's temple being the center of the community. We hope that the temples would lead to nearby businesses that are thriving, the Hindu businesses, and also the community service, and also the medical outreach and other things that the Tirupati Trust does. So I'm looking at these mandirs as an ecosystem that will promote community activities ranging from spirituality to education, because they run Tirupati Trust also runs educational institutions, to hospitals, to community clinics, and eventually become a strong counter to uh, the tide of conversion that is coming. Now, I also know that these are the same politicians in both the states that are aggressively promoting non-Hindu causes. But Hindus are at a stage where they take even this little bit of positivity that they get, we hang on to it. Your thoughts? And Muditaji, thank you very much. I'll let Utsoda know that you like the drum sounds. Utsoda, any thoughts on that? You're on mute. Utsoda, you're on mute.
Yeah, so my thoughts are, I really think that these temples are a drop in the bucket. The money is from the Hindu community. The state is not actually playing any important role in the construction, or I mean, all they're doing is allowing it to happen. And the situation of the Hindus is so bad, especially in Simandra, where Christian conversion activities are extremely high. That Hindus are going to take anything that they get.
Yep. Hey, Utsada, with that, let's have this drum roll for the final segment of the day, and that is the Hindu phobe of the week or Hindu hater of the week, whichever way you want to call it. And Utsada, tell us who is the Hindu phobe of the week.
So this is very sad and tragic, and this shows the level of depravity that many Hindus or people with Hindu sounding names, uh, with blue tick accounts on social media, uh, with highly educated people, living in Western countries, working for foreign radical Islamist interests, can stoop down to. So there was this a lady in the Middle East, in Bahrain, who had protested against a restaurant, uh, against a British manager of a restaurant. Her name was Mariam Naj, and she had protested that she was not allowed to enter the restaurant because she was not dressed in the manner that the restaurant expected her to be. And this gentleman, Ashok Swine, took up this information and replaced the British manager's name with the Indian, and then spread it around. Now, mind you, this guy has a social media following of hundreds and thousands of people, and he spread it around all over social media, despite the protests of this girl Mariam Naji, who actually said that no, the manager was not a Hindu. So the level of Hindu phobia is so high amongst many of these individuals that they fake news around the world to target Hindus. And note the tweet. I mean, if you are watching this show and you can see the tweet, he not only mentions the manager as an Indian but also an Indian Hindu. He makes sure to write the word Hindu after the Indian. That's the level of hatred this Ashok Swan has for Hindus. So this week's Hindu Show of the week.
You heard that, right, Utsada?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
But really, this is the state of affairs. It's really sad, and it's Ashok Swain has been a, a noted Hindu phobe. He has done, whether it's the farmers' agitation or CAA or Hindutva, or no matter what issue you take, he will find every opportunity to malign Hindus. And we talked about him in the past. He has a very cushy academic position in one of the European universities. And he uses that position to spew nothing but hatred against Hindus. Why does he still have the position?
So I want to share something that's another. I saw another social media account say, and I just wanted to share it. I think that kind of represents Ashok Swine's position. Just a minute, I will share it, Ajay.
Sure.
Hold on 1 minute. this so this guy says, do you see my screen?
Uh, yeah, let me bring it up. Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. So this guy says, to be honest, I don't think it's Ashok Swine's fault. With all the turmoil that is going on in Pakistan right now, maybe a low-level ISI guy gave him the wrong information, and like a useful dimmy, he just copied it and pasted it. So that kind of tells you the, because the guy probably doesn't even know what he's posting, and he just tweets whatever he's asked to tweet. And the turmoil that is going on in Pakistan right now, he doesn't know.
Well, so why do people like this have cushy academic positions? I mean, doesn't truth matter in academics?
Well, you will see so many of them in American academia too. I can name up like 5 names off my fingertips right now, and none of them are actually Indian Americans. There is a whole list of Indian Americans I can name too, with Hindu sounding names, but non-Indian Americans also I can name many of them like that.
Well, so thank you once again. I know it's not easy to do these live shows from India, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and I know you're taking time away from your family, a much needed family trip to India. With all that going on, you still took out time and you did this show, so I'm truly, truly appreciative of that. And I think next week you'll be here when we do the show. We are quickly approaching 100th anniversary, so we need to start planning something big for the 100th anniversary show.
Yeah,
This will happen.
I was going to make an appeal online and say, we will have 100 episodes in the next few weeks. Anybody has any ideas how we can present it? We have a body of work over these 100 episodes. A lot of research has gone into these episodes, and each topic we discuss it and think through it as much as we can during the last 2-3 days of the week. So anybody has any ideas on how we can package it and present it for the betterment of our community and awareness within the community, please write to us. We would like to do something after the 100th episode, and next week, hopefully I will be attending and joining this show from Washington area. I'll be back in the US.
Hey, Utsara, before we go, I want to point out that on May 1st, 2022, at 4 o'clock Eastern, Hindu Pact will have its first fundraising gala of the year. And this first one, we do 2 galas a year. Ideally, we want to do 2 galas a year. And this particular gala on May 1st, uh, the you know has a theme: value based politics the Hindu way. Value based politics the Hindu way. And it has a theme of values, equality, and diversity. And we are saying that, how do Hindus create a society which erases color based fault lines? So, this is kind of continuing our theme in many ways of United Colors of Holi. It's continuing our Hindu theme of Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So, please mark your calendars. You can go to our website, find a link to register. We will have the link up later today. Please register and join the conversation. So thank you, Mudita ji. Uh, you know, Mudita ji, please do register. You'll see the link up on our website later today. But thank you. So that is the show
I
for
want
today.
I want to give a shout out to Vandana Tiwari ji for designing this.
Absolutely,
Vandana
absolutely.
Tiwari ji was traveling to India as well for the last many weeks. She took the time out and made the effort. Fantastic work as always, Vandana ji. Beautiful graphics. Thank you so much.
So actually, since you mentioned, I want to say that the team that is working on this. So Vannaji, Renu Gupta ji was also traveling, and she was still attending the meetings, putting this together. Dipti Mahajan ji also was working on it. She's also traveling to India, and she was working on it. And of course, Utsoda from India, and Adele. Maybe all of you guys met in India and did this work. I don't know.
No, no,
But
Adele was not in India, but the
not
rest of
Adele. I
us.
said minus Adele. Everyone else, the entire team was in India.
Yeah.
So, you know. But great. I think it's amazing amount of work. It's awesome flyer. I mean, this flyer is really great, and I think that we should definitely acknowledge this team with Renuji taking a charge here. It's just Renuji is an amazing organizer. So when Renuji takes charge, things happen. So thank you, and Utsada, we will let's meet up next week in person.
Yes,
And
and
maybe also that we should plan the 100th anniversary where we are both in the same room. I think that's the way
let's
to
do
do the
that.
100th
Let's do
anniversary.
that. Let's meet up and do it together. It
Absolutely.
will be great.
With that, Utsada, thank you. And once again, I turn to the music created for just Hindu Lounge by Decibels. And Decibel is this amazing group that creates music for Hindu Lounge. And as we close out the show, please, if you have time, listen to this amazing music created by Decibel. Thank you, Utsada, once again. And over to Decibel.